turn it on. First of all, thank everyone for showing up today. Want to recognize a couple of distinguished guests we have in our audience. First of all, up front up here, Representative Chair Lady Katie Dempsey, who represents this area in the State House. Thank you, Katie, for all your help with this. Also, we have a distinguished guest from the other side of the building in the back here, Senator Huffstetler. So thank you, sir, for coming by. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started right into our program. This is the Energy Subcommittee for the Special Committee on Resource Management. So if you're in the wrong room, there's a state health benefit meeting going on around here somewhere too. Today, we're going to be talking about a couple of different subjects, but primarily looking at natural gas in Georgia, looking at it from both small and large distribution standpoint, but also considering our pipeline supply. Last meeting, we discussed primarily electricity, both the generation, transmission, distribution sides of electricity. So today we're going to look at another type of energy in the state of Georgia, and it's actually a part of that electricity mix now, a bigger part than it's ever been. So we'd like to get started with, I'm going to ask Mr. Alan Ford with Kinder Morgan. Our podium is to my left over here. And if there are any slides, our committee we can turn around and see the big screen behind me. And Alan, I'll let you go right ahead, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we do have some slides. Is that going to the big screen? All right, well, thank you very much for the opportunity to present today and discuss our footprint in Georgia, our current role in providing significant natural gas supply to the state, and our new project called South System 4, which is a generational expansion of natural gas supply to the southeast, including the state of Georgia. First, a little bit about our company and what we do. We're a transportation, infrastructure, and storage company. What does that mean? That means that, and by the way, I'm Alan Ford, Vice President of Kinder Morgan. I should start with that, and I appreciate the transportation and storage. So what you see on that map are pipeline systems around the United States. We have about 80,000 miles of pipeline, in addition to about 140 terminals and storage facilities. You also see on the map different colors of pipe. That means different products. So on any given day in the U.S., our pipeline systems carry about 40% of the natural gas used in the United States. So a significant part of our energy infrastructure is our current system. Petroleum products as well, from Reagan National to Leno Hartsfield, Jackson to San Francisco to Los Angeles. Our pipelines transport the energy, including jet fuel, diesel and gasoline, that powers our eastern and western states. So collectively, a very important part of our energy infrastructure. Period. Bringing that to Georgia is a very similar system. Significant petroleum product supply, gasoline, diesel, and jet for airports and automobile transportation related uses, but also a very significant supply of natural gas. Our south system through our Elton system, we've been supplying natural gas in a significant capacity to the state of Georgia for over 60 years. So our current system primarily for the southeast is called the South System. That's the blue line. And the project we're going to be talking about today is South System 4, which generally indicates there's been a 3, 2, and 1. And why is there 4? Because we have expanded this system multiple times over the last 50 years. for increased natural gas supply to this state as well as the rest of the Southeast. No question, it's a growing market, population-wise, manufacturing-wise, utility-wise, and we are prepared to meet that capacity with additional energy infrastructure as we had last year. I'll go back and forth between these two maps because you'll see on this line the southern blue line, and here the red line. And the reason you don't see a blue line and a red line together because the red is next to the blue. What does that mean? Every time we've expanded the system to Georgia and Mississippi and Alabama, it's been in a co-location capacity. That means that we put one pipe next to another pipe. These are all natural gas pipelines buried underground. And you co-locate or brownfield locate because those areas already have a pipeline system. So South System 1, 2, and 3, and now 4 are all pipes next to each other. You see this red line and the blue line. There's likely 3, 4, maybe 5 pipelines there already. So by design, South System 4, the pipeline we're talking about today, is 90% co-located with existing infrastructure. That's important from a regulatory perspective. That's important from a land perspective. And that's important from an environmental perspective. Less impact you can have on these pipelines. And the way to do that is to co-locate them with existing. So what is South System? First and foremost, it is a partnership, a joint venture with Southern Company. And we're very proud of that association, sharing responsibilities on this project, because one of the things that develop these projects, both from a regulatory perspective and a public perspective, is you need to explain why are you building this? What's the purpose of this? This is a $3.5 billion investment to grow this pipeline system by over 200 miles. Over 200 miles. And the first question is, why do you need it? Well, it's clear because the lead utility in the region, Southern Company, is a 50% owner of this, Georgia Power, and others. They're telling us, as the transporter, the shipper, they need additional product. They need it for power generation, residential growth, industrial growth, manufacturing. All of the economic development that's happening in the region. Utilities are becoming prepared to meet that need in this pipeline system. And its significant delivery of additional natural gas supply is going to meet that need. About 1.3 billion cubic feet per day. When you translate that, what does that mean? 1.3 billion. You look at a billion, that generally isn't enough natural gas for the average natural gas use of a home, 5 million homes. So you can translate that into what 1.3 billion means. It's not all going to homes, but for industrial and other needs that are coming up. So a major expansion in the region specifically for the use of the Southeast. That's also important. This is all dedicated to the Southeast and is in a specific way. Forecasting, not just today or tomorrow, but for 20 or 30 years in the future. What is the capacity that the region's going to need? They need all the capacity that you've got now. This is for additional capacity in the future. This is a federally regulated project too, as important to know. The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission governs interstate natural gas pipelines through the Natural Gas Act. So they will have ultimate decision-making authority over this project. The Federal Energy Regulatory Commission is a commission appointed by the president, 5 commissioners, and they will decide what the project is in the public interest. But key determining factors on that in the public interest is the project needed. And we've far surpassed that threshold by the utility signing up for long-term commercial capacity on this project in Southern California. From a scheduling perspective, we are fully in the regulatory process. As you all know, regulatory processes are lengthy, but the project has been received well at the federal, state, and local levels. And anticipate an in-service date of, well, we're looking at, back up. I think this is important to note, particularly for the members of the committee. We've been doing business with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission and the federal government. And I was speaking at a conference last week, South States Energy Conference in Alabama. And you were asked about where is the regulatory process from a federal level. And we've heard about, since the Trump administration took office, some of the things that they have done to promote domestic energy independence or domestic energy dominance. What are the practical implications that the Energy Dominance Council, the others of the administration, move projects along? I'll give you a specific example. I said this at the conference last week. Now, this is in Utah, but it's a real-time example. We had a project out there that was ready to go in service, was needed for the Uinta Basin in Utah, and we were having a difficult issue with the BLM, finalizing getting over that finish line. Those of you that have worked with the BLM, the Corps of Engineers in the past, do a long process. The moment that the Trump administration took office, within 2 weeks, we had a representative of the administration that we reached out to. First of all, they called us back and said, and this is an exact quote, "What can we do to help?" Now, those of you that work with the federal government for a long time, I'm not talking just the last administration, but a lot of administrations, when's the last time you've heard that? So I say we have an in-service date in the fourth quarter of 28. We have every indication that the regulatory process is going to be accelerated. And we could likely be looking at earlier than that. I think that's important for the committee to know, is that things are really happening on a federal level that's going to have meaningful regulatory long-term reform. And that doesn't mean cutting corners or relaxing important regulations. It just means prioritizing major projects that are in the public interest. Before, as shown by our company and Southern Company partnering the needs that have been represented by the states of Georgia and Alabama. South Carolina is part of another project, but that the federal government is listening, and your state leadership, your governors of both states have, and your congressional delegation have made that known in Washington. So we appreciate that. We as a major infrastructure company in the country appreciate what Georgia is doing. To not just quietly, but publicly advocate for additional energy infrastructure. So we're excited about where we are in this project now from a regulatory perspective. We're moving forward very quickly. We look forward to potentially an earlier in service that's done. These infrastructure projects are really, really important for the state. Why is that? Once you have infrastructure in place, because it is hard to build anything, roads, bridges, water lines, it's hard to build things. And once you have that infrastructure in place, it happens. Georgia is making the investment now in this pipeline project that's going to serve for 20 or 30 years. You're developing one of the strongest energy grids in the country. You're forward-looking and forward-thinking. That's important for economic development, security, energy security of your citizens. Other parts of the country don't have it. While they're dealing with rolling blackouts and power outages, you're going to have additional energy security for the long term. And what we're finding is when companies are looking to locate, grow their business, or start a new business, develop a major manufacturing hub, whatever it is, they're looking at reliable, affordable supply of energy. It's a key component of their location of business, and you are investing in I also want to mention too, because these are big picture items I've talked about. Why is it important to the country, the world, federal government, state government? But my experience on pipelines is equally important is the individual landowner that's impacted by the project. I want the committee to know that both Southern Company and Kinder Morgan have invested and made sure that everyone across this project route knows what we're doing, how we're doing it, when we're doing it, and the specifics of this project. So all of the landowners in Georgia have been contacted personally and directly by our company. All counties that are impacted by the project have personally been met with by myself, say, and others at Southern Company, directly, repeatedly, to talk to them about the project. I hope every legislator, I believe every legislator that's on this project has been briefed by Southern Company. And we're going to continue that. We had multiple open houses, open meetings on the project to talk to individual landowners. We had 99% of the survey completed with the permission of the individual landowner. And that says a lot, as I think about the history we have in the state, 60-year history, Southern's long-term history. And I'll give you even a more specific example, real time, of the importance of landowners. We have a small subdivision, maybe about an hour from Atlanta, that is concerned about where we have proposed to route on this line. Remember, we're locating this, let's go back to the map, we're locating this on that next, in that pipeline corridor, 3 or 4 of 5 of the pipelines. And, but in some places, the growth has been so intense over the years that literally, we have a 50-foot easement where we bury this pipe, 50 feet is what we do. The growth has come right up to the edge of our pipe. In fact, in some places, it's gone over our pipe, parking lots and things like that. So we're not going to be digging any of that up, so we have to go around it, cut out, loop, we'll call it around. And there's a handful of folks that aren't thrilled about the loop. So I was out a couple of weeks ago myself, meeting in the living room with about 5 landowners that were concerned about it. Went out and walked the area that they're looking at. We're going to go around somewhere. So I think it's important for you to know with your constituents whenever there's questions about these types of projects, because whenever you develop infrastructure, folks will be paid, their concerns will be addressed, and Southern Company and Board are committed to doing that. We want to make this project good for obviously the state and the country, but also good for the individual landowner that's being impacted on their particular project. So I'll just finish. I'm happy to answer any questions. We appreciate the reception we have had in the state from the county level. We'll also compliment the state of Georgia and the regulatory agencies that we have some type of jurisdictional role as a project. We appreciate that, the governor, and we appreciate the commitment to the state of Georgia to prioritize this project and projects like this from a regulatory perspective to make sure that it gets the immediate attention of the agencies so that we can stay on schedule, put this project in service, get this $3.5 billion investment in place, and help make sure that Georgia has the energy supply and energy security needs. Thank you for your attention and happy to answer.
Thank you, Mr. Farr. First question, I'll recognize Chairman Dickey at the far end down here.
Thank you. Appreciate that presentation. 940 landowners that y'all are dealing with for an easement, and I'll just tell the committee they've done a great job communicating and contacting and negotiating with me, and I appreciate it. We're not finished yet, but great job. This is a huge investment for y'all, increasing capacity. Is it fully subscribed, or do you have long-term contracts to completely fill this new capacity, or could you speak to that?
Yes, a good question, and I'm glad to hear that landowner. We have about 940 landowners state, and I think we're done with our survey. We're about, as of this morning, about 4% acquired for easements. So there's other ways to go on that, so when you make a commitment to spend $3.5 billion between the companies, you absolutely have to have certainty about it. You have to have long-term committed commercial contracts with credit-worthy customers, and yes, we do. So how do you scope this project? This project is primarily a 42-inch pipe. There's some 36 and 30 inch, primarily 42-inch. So that gets us to the 1.3 billion capacity. We're also modifying our compressor stations. We're not building any new compressor stations, but we're modifying our existing compressor stations. We have about 14 compressor stations that we've modified. So all that is part of the development of capacity. This is an open access pipeline, so even though, let's just characterize the pipeline as mostly full, we also allow others to potentially tap into the line for additional development, additional capacity. But you have to reach an investment threshold to justify the private investment, which this project is privately funded by the company. But also to show to the regulators that you're not building this and hopefully somebody might use it someday. If you build it, will they come? They have to see those commercial contracts to know that this is the project, is needed, is committed, is financed.
Okay, additional questions by the committee?
I do have one question as a follow-up to what you just said, and thank you for the presentation. But I want to make sure I heard you clearly. You're building because you have the contracts and capacity for the load that's going to come through, right? But that's not building for the future, though. That's kind of building for right now. How is that solving, and I'm glad you're doing this because we need this, right? But I would think that we would be also building in a way that we are preparing for additional growth and not to just accommodate the demands right now. Did I hear you wrong?
No, let me talk a little bit about that. You're right. So, but what is a long-term commercial contract? You're generally talking 10, 15, 20 years that the contracts are made. So if you're contracting for capacity on our system, you have to forecast out over sometimes a 20-year period to determine how much capacity I need. Because when you're talking about long-term fixed contracts, you are reserving capacity on the pipeline system. That's energy security for whoever is reserving that. Utilities generally reserving that, saying we're going to use a certain amount of natural gas capacity on your line. They're reserving space on the pipeline. Because if you don't reserve space and there is a tight natural gas supply, you could potentially be buying natural gas at a higher rate because you're buying what's not reserved. So this is forward-looking thinking by the utilities to have long-term contracts where they specifically reserve capacity, but they have to be thinking, this isn't what we need today. This is what we need potentially decades from now to justify this expenditure on that reservation capacity. And also add too that pipelines, this is for a long-term need that the utilities forecast. But we also build in additional space on the line beyond that. And this is a big pipe. This is a big expansion. This is probably the biggest we've done since we created this project several decades ago. The South System first. This is the biggest expansion. So this is long-term. It's I started out by calling it a generational project. Generational project that is looking for the next 20, 30 plus years. That's generally a good forecast time. If you revert back 20 to 30 years before now, think of where we were that's what you're building. You're finding that sweet spot, if you will, not too long in the future. Not overreaching because we're going to be 30 years, but enough to to position the state for security for that longer term with this project. Is that helpful?
Yes, yes, thank you.
Chairman Thomas?
Thank you. Actually, the other two members answered or asked most of my questions, but I do have one. Are you all involved with the PSC and the IRP process at all? Do they send any of that information out to you all?
That's not
Integrated resource planning,
that's
just.
not from pipeline transportation construction system, not for us. Since this is a federally regulated project, we have.
Yeah, and the reason why I asked the question is if the expectation is, say, just carrying forward, we're 50% natural gas power generation in the state. If we're talking about 1,000 megawatts of additional usage, I mean, that's quite a bit of natural gas. So I was just curious, I'm trying to kind of learn how all these groups work together. So thank you.
That's a good point though, because, and I think that's really the added value of this project. Generally, on all of our systems across the country, utilities, right? Our role is to deliver to some entity that serves an end user. So utilities play a role in that. And here, not only do they subscribe for capacity on the system, also. So when you're talking about the gigawatt supply that utilities are eventually going to be part of, their partnership in a project like this is additional security for that, because they're going to be on both sides. They're going to be on the transportation piece because the car owner in this project also want to deliver. So I think Southern companies have been very forward-looking in that they are taking all of that into account with their multitude of utilities that service the region to be prepared for the kind of world we're treating.
I see no other questions at this point. I did want to ask one question before we could go here. You had mentioned earlier about the kind of, I guess, enhanced cooperation you're getting out of the federal government right now from a permitting standpoint and that sort of thing. From a state level, is there anything you've encountered in Georgia that we as a legislature need to think of and take consideration of regarding helping to make this project go forward?
Could you help us in the Pacific Northwest? You know, part of doing business in 43 states as we do, I'm actually going to South Carolina tomorrow, but then California. We have an issue with the Port of Los Angeles, and Los Angeles City Council. If you help with that at all, that'd be great. But seriously though, when you look at these type of investments, and we have about $11 billion of new energy infrastructure development across the country. Currently planned. That's actually planned. More than that, not because this is the announced. And as you can see, a big chunk of that is here in the Southeast, South Carolina. Why is that? Because part of the investment that you make is regulatory service. And we know in Mississippi, there is regulatory service. You have a federal government that is promoting domestic energy dominance, not by lip service, but by action. And you have states from the governor to the legislature, regulatory that are encouraging, welcoming, and also from a public perspective, but also more the innards of the agencies where these projects historically in some states have involved now. So absolutely, we're very pleased to be building in Georgia. We talked to him weeks ago. You know, he's on board with Georgia, in a place that's going to address energy supply issues now and in the future. And we wish more states.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
The offer is
Yes.
still open, so join us.
A little outside of our territory, but thank you. Next, I'd like to invite Matt Seal with the South Georgia Energy Authority to come to the podium. We're swapping out some microphones here. We've had a little difficulty with the folks watching online hearing the speaker presentation, so we're going to take care of that real quick. Matt, go ahead and proceed at your pleasure, sir.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the time and the ability to speak to you today. Members of the committee, thank you for your attention. Appreciate it. All you do, I know a lot of people will think, oh, this is just 40 days at the beginning of the year. Y'all don't do any work outside of that, but I know all too well the committee meetings, the discussions, the hard work goes into it. So just me first, just share my appreciation for that. As mentioned, you switch out again. Is that better? Okay. All right. I'm here representing the South Georgia Energy Authority, but my normal day job, I'm the CEO of the Douglas Coffee County Chamber of Commerce and Economic Development Authority. We actually just formed the South Georgia Energy Authority thanks to you in the legislature just in the previous session. So I've come to talk about that, and you're going to hear presentations. You just heard one about the statewide issue, capacity, the infrastructure, the network. I'm here to talk about what the impact means at the local level and the regional level, specifically in my area of South Georgia. So just the importance of it. Go ahead, next slide, please. This is just a little bit about just kind of overall things. Again, I'm gonna breeze through some of these slides just because I know we've had a presentation already, and I think Gas Authority is going on soon after. We'll be talking about big picture things. But you know all too well, gas is a big deal, and I appreciate you giving the time and dedication to this subject in today's meeting. You can see the number of residential versus commercial and industrial customers. Obviously, the industrial has a lower number there, but it's much bigger on the demand side of things. And then just some of the list of the people who are involved in the infrastructure for natural gas in the state of Georgia. And then at the bottom, you can see a lot of those are municipal systems where a city itself is providing that service to the end customer, both to the residential, but also commercial and industrial. Those 5 communities listed at the bottom, that's Douglas, Fitzgerald, Tifton, Osceola, and Ashburn, are the 5 communities that put together the South Georgia Energy Authority through the legislature last year. And all 5 of those provide gas. 4 of those are gas authority members. Osceola has an independent consultant that handles their gas service structure there. Next slide. So as I've really already said, and really had already gotten spoken to by the Kinder Morgan presentation, so thank you for that. It is absolutely critical for industrial operations and for manufacturing. And to really bring this home, I want to tell you something. One of the biggest industries, one of the largest private employers in Coffee County is Pilgrims. Used to be called Pilgrims Pride. They restructured not too long ago. Now it's Pilgrims. But they have an entire poultry processing ecosystem. It is about 1,200 jobs. And in 2008, they actually shut down that poultry processing plant. And to use the word devastating to the economy would be an understatement. The number of contract growers of chickens was not just in Coffee County. There are 10 counties that supplied that. And so the chicken industry, the bank loans, the people that service the houses, and also the industrial process and all those things, our unemployment rate got near 20% during that time. And it was no fault of our own. It wasn't they offshore. It was just the company went into bankruptcy. Fortunately for us and for our region, about 2 years later, they restructured under a company called JBS based in Brazil. And we were one of 2 plants that had previously been shut down that they agreed to reopen. And that was a huge victory for our community, for all the surrounding communities. So to even take the success story a little further, about a year ago, we were able to get Pilgrims to open a pet food manufacturing facility, which added to that ecosystem. So they already had the poultry processing facility, but also a mill, feed mill, and a hatchery. Now they've added pet food manufacturing. That was a $130 million investment in Coffee County with a population of 44,000. That was 75 jobs, which I know in a metro city like Atlanta is just called Tuesday, but 75 jobs in South Georgia, in Douglas, that's a big deal. So it had a huge impact. The gas demand required was pretty much all we had left at the end of the lateral that we're on. So if somebody else comes to me as the economic development guy for Coffee County today and says, I want to bring $130 million investment, 75 jobs, and I need this amount of gas, I can't do it. And that's the impact of the natural gas capacity issue we're dealing with, drilled down to a local community. I mentioned some of the other communities. Fitzgerald, Ben Hill County is also a part of our our joint development authority, the South Georgia Energy Authority. They've got 3 companies that are in the timber industry. You guys are probably having some discussions about the timber industry lately with some of the plant closures in both Blakely and on the coast in Effingham or Savannah and Liberty County. We've had opportunities to expand one of those, but we weren't able to do it in Ben Hill County. Jason Dunn can talk to you more about those details, simply because of the natural gas capacity that just couldn't come through. So we got opportunities to do things to bring in more timber, to process more timber in South Georgia, and we can't do it because of natural gas. So that's the reason we went after the things we did and have had some legislative successes because of your support, and I want to say thank you. So just to go through this list, as I mentioned, the higher numbers of customers is obviously going to be on the residential side throughout the state, throughout any location in Georgia. But the industrial sector is responsible for 1/3 of the consumption in the U.S. It's not too different than that in the state of Georgia. It is absolutely essential for the timber industry. They need it for drying, they need it for processing. And then you can see a list of some other industries where it's absolutely necessary. We have some other, so I mentioned Pilgrims. It's a huge user of natural gas in Douglas. PCC Airfoils is an aerospace company. They're a really large user of natural gas from the city of Douglas. Southwire, which you guys probably know because they have their home base in Carrollton, and I believe 13 plants there. We've got 2 of them in Douglas. They're a big user of natural gas. So we have a diversified industrial base, which is exactly what we're supposed to be doing in rural communities. And one of our restrictions is natural gas capacity, and so that's why we're fighting so hard to make this an issue, bring it to the forefront. Again, thank you for being a part of that conversation. And make some things happen so we can continue growing in our part of the state. Next slide. You already saw a map, and actually, just to kind of go through this. So that's the main pipeline that comes through Southwest Georgia that feeds us. There's a lateral just over 60 miles that actually starts in Albany, Georgia, Dougherty County, comes all the way across the state, and actually doesn't even get to Coffee County. It stops just sort of us right around the Irwin-Coffee County line. We'd love to have, Alan, we'd love to have a 42-inch pipe come our way. He was talking about a 42-inch pipe with that new investment. Thank you for investing in Georgia. The lateral that comes across to meet our needs is a 6-inch pipe. When it gets to Tiff County, it drops from a 6-inch to a 4-inch pipe. And that 4-inch pipe, because of the foresight of some folks long before me in the city of Douglas, they invested, I don't know how many millions of dollars over 20 years ago, closer to 25 now. And there's 10-inch pipes for the city of Douglas, owned by the city of Douglas to manage that system, because people in Coffee County and Douglas, we are known for leaning forward and being prepared for growth. So they put a 10-inch pipe infrastructure in there, hoping that would be advanced. So now we've got a 4-inch lateral that feeds into our 10-inch pipes. So we've prepared for growth, and the lateral is the limiting factor. And now again, because of the capacity and because of the growth we have in our industries. I'll say it like this too. We are very regional, and I think hopefully you can see that by the 5 cities that came together to try to speak as one voice instead of individual cities trying to do things on their own. The city of Douglas has done some growing in the last couple of decades. And we're in the unfortunate position of being able to grow because a couple of plants that require natural gas and some of those other communities I listed have shut down. If they grow, we're actually in trouble, and we don't want to be in a position where we can only grow because other people in our region of the state aren't. That's a terrible position for us to be in as a region, to hope that something happens somewhere else so we can actually get more natural gas capacity on the same lateral, the same pipeline, to continue to grow. Douglas itself is certainly an employment hub. We continue to bring new things in. But again, this is just the limiting factor for us. All right, next slide. So some legislative progress, some legislative victories. And again, thank you for your support in this. We made presentations to the House Rural Development Council before it was made a standing committee earlier this year in the session. And we got two things done legislatively. One, we were able to get the Georgia Environmental Finance Authority, GEFA, which traditionally makes loans and grants and helps out with infrastructure for both water and wastewater throughout the state. They're now legislatively able to do the same thing for natural gas infrastructure. That was a huge thing. So it allows us to tap into a resource there that's great for other pieces of infrastructure, and now it's allowable for natural gas as well. The other thing was the creation, as I mentioned already, of the South Georgia Energy Authority. That's 5 cities. It's set up just like any other joint development authority. I would note that I guess the significant difference is most joint development authorities are counties, and these, because of the nature of municipal gas systems, are 5 cities working together to make sure we grow together and grow our capacity so we can continue creating jobs and creating wealth in rural part of South Georgia. Next slide. That's just the play-by-play on the legislative piece there. Our state senator, Cardin Summers, dropped a bill of companion legislation sponsored by Majority Whip Burchett, who represents a piece of Coffee County. And so that's what happened with the GEFA, allowing GEFA to be able to do programs that help natural gas. Next slide. And again, Senator Summers was very helpful in drafting the legislation to help us with the South Georgia Energy Authority as well. And to just give you a quick synopsis or quick details on that, again, that's 5 cities. The board of the South Georgia Energy Authority is made up of 8 members. Each of those 5 cities get to select 1 representative, and then the remaining 3 are economic development professionals, because this is very much an economic development issue. Economic development professionals that have to come from one of those cities. So I'm on there as an economic development professional. City manager Charlie Davis from the city of Douglas is the representative from the city of Douglas. We have 1 mayor, 1 city manager. Actually, the city of Ashburn chose their economic developer to represent their city. So kind of have 4 economic development professionals on there. And then both Fitzgerald and Tifton sent the people that essentially are the gas superintendents for their system. So we've got a really good kind of broad set of perspectives from the political, the financial, the technical details, and of course the economic development perspective. That's the reason that's driving this whole effort. So we've had our formation meeting. We've been in some conversations with Southern Natural, that is the owner of that lateral that comes across and feeds the system. And we've talked about some potential both short-term solutions and longer-term solutions to make sure we increase the capacity. It's worth noting that probably the biggest issue right now going back to the question about the right now demand versus the future demand, our biggest issue is the extreme temperatures, and we've been getting a few more of those extreme weather days in the winter. And so we actually are going over what's our allotted capacity, and we're having to interrupt service for industry. Now, they know that when they're signing contracts, firm versus interruptible, but interruptible usually means firm as long as everything's flowing. And so they do get a little frustrated, but understand they've been working with us really well. But we've got folks, some of our biggest gas burners in those communities have to be told on extreme cold days in the winter, sorry, you can't operate today. It's going to be really hard to convince some new industries to come to any of our communities, knowing that sometimes we're going to have these extreme temperature days. So there's some things we could do for that short-term issue. And then of course, there's some things we need to do for the long-term demand to make sure we're growing things for the future. This lateral was put in, the 6-inch drops to a 4-inch. I'll keep reminding you guys that, then it feeds into our 10-inch in Douglas. I was put in the early 60s. So that was enough capacity for about 60 years of growth in our part of the state. We need to do things now for the next 60 years. And so that means not just preparing or providing for who we have now, but it's going to be increasingly challenging to bring new industries, to create new jobs, to create wealth and prosperity for folks in rural Georgia without tackling this issue in some form. So next slide. And that's my presentation. I just wanted to let you know what was going on. Again, I appreciate all of your support on both those pieces of legislation. There's still plenty of work to be done, but creating the South Georgia Energy Authority specifically gave us a better platform for a voice of a region as opposed to one city or another city trying to go and do something, whether that's a joint venture programs with the state, whatever solutions we can come up with. And so it is very much, we preach regionalism. This is it in action. And we've got a lot of cities that want to continue to grow. And unfortunately, this is going to be a ceiling for that until we deal with it. So, Mr. Chairman, I thank you again for allowing me to speak to you today and be glad to entertain any questions.
Okay, thank you, sir. Committee, we have some questions. I see none by the committee, but I do have a couple of questions for you real quick,
Yes, sir.
if we can. Now, realizing and understanding that your authority is new, you just began forming and started to work. You mentioned the two pieces of legislation that'll have an impact on what's going on with you guys that we passed this past session. One was the creation of the authority. What do you see going forward that the state legislature needs to look into that may assist with your efforts and the efforts of your members?
I know this isn't the answer you want to hear, but the biggest thing is going to be funding, or at least the ability, again, with GFA, the legislation allowed them to be able to do that. Then there's the question of, okay, what's the allocation that's allowed for things like that? And that's a conversation that's happening at state level. So certainly appropriations towards those things, or at least, and I'll say it like this, because I know people come to committee meetings like this and say, hey, give me a handout, give me a handout. That authority wasn't formed so we could just come and ask just for money. It's so we can go engage with Southern Natural and talk about, hey, how do we tackle this problem together? We don't mind putting skin in the game. I know that's really important, and that's really important to us because we don't want to just be handed the solution. We just want access to some of the resources to pretty much take our control our own destiny, is the way I've said it before. And right now, that destiny is a little out of our hands, but these two pieces of legislation helped us kind of move forward in having the conversation as a unified voice, access to resources. I know that there is some principal forgiveness with GFA programs. As a previous mayor, I took advantage of those on the water side of things. But you still have to have a plan to make a repayment and do things. It's just significantly better terms than what might be available in the capital markets. So that's what I'd say to that.
Okay, and really that's the expected response. GFA is a valuable tool we have in this state, but the list of requests is far larger than their resources. So I agree that needs to be looked at from an allocation standpoint. Any questions on the part of the committee?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
I got.
Yes, sir.
Am I correct? Is this the first time GFA's had permission to do natural gas? They've done water and sewer. Is this new for GFA with the natural gas?
Yes, that's correct. In fact, there was an attempt, I think 3 sessions ago, to do an appropriation that would go through GFA, and the question seemed to be whether that was appropriate or not. And so this legislation actually answered the question definitively. Yes, it is. It just hadn't been brought up before, but that's exactly what the legislation did.
I appreciate you reminding me that the Senate does sometimes pass meaningful legislation.
I do want to say too, since we're talking about GFA, I've had incredible cooperation from their executive director, Hunter Hill. He actually called me unprompted about 4 or 5 weeks ago just to check in, and just want to applaud and appreciate him for his genuine desire to help some rural communities with this issue.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, next we're going to hear from some representatives for the Gas Authority. Scott Tollison and Chris Cohn.
I think it's just going to be me, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, that's perfect. Perfect. Go right ahead. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Scott Tollison with the Gas Authority, and thank you for having us, and thank you for having this session. As we get into the slides here, just want to thank Matt for hitting on a lot of the points that we need to talk about them on the municipal side. And I'm going to start with a background on the municipal gas systems and then go into some of the resources we have in Georgia and just talk about our industry in general. But one thing I wanted to do at the offset is thank our pipeline partners for being here. I know Alan, Helen, Josh, Transco, Southern Natural. the economic development in Georgia has depended on your infrastructure being in Georgia, and I just want to thank them for what they do. I can't imagine operating in this federal regulatory environment over the last 25 or 30 years where the pendulum swings from one side to the other and you don't know how to do business. Every 4 years, your business model has to change. So I just want to thank them for what they do, and I appreciate them being here. Let's see if I can do this. Just a little bit of background on why there are municipal gas systems. When these pipelines were being built here in Georgia, the cities happened to be along the paths of these pipelines. So back in the 50s and 60s, when these pipelines were being built to the big population centers in the Northeast and East, the cities happened to be along the way, and they said, well, this looks like an economic development opportunity, and we would like to be in the business of delivering a local economic development engine with abundant, affordable energy. So that's why these systems were built back in the 50s and 60s. And back then, the pipeline industry and the natural gas industry was a fully regulated industry at the federal level. And so you fast forward into the 80s, just give you a quick, next slide, give you a quick picture of, you'll see these maps from both of our pipeline partners, but this is the Transco map. So you can see when these pipes are built, they were gathering gas in the Gulf of Mexico and sending it up the East Coast. And so and we happen to be along the route of transcontinental. Here's the Southern Natural map you've already seen. And Matt was talking about that southwest corner of Georgia there. And you can see something there that looks dangerous from an infrastructure point of view. It's a lot of dead ends. You can see a lot of dead ends on that system. And so that's what concerns us. And as Matt was talking about, Douglas is out there on one of those dead ends. And so that's where the issues are in Southwest Georgia. But that system was originally built independent of the Southern Natural Company, and it was acquired many years ago and integrated into the system. But that was an independent pipeline company many, many years ago. And so you can see that looks just like a large distribution company. It doesn't look like an interstate pipeline. So that's the issue with the small diameter pipe, and it's spider webbed with a lot of dead ends in Southwest Georgia. So why the gas authority? Well, when the industry was being deregulated back in the late 80s, along with the telecommunications, the airline industry, the energy industry was being deregulated. And so now we're a very segmented industry. We have exploration and production companies that go find the gas. We have pipeline companies that then deliver the gas across the country. And then you have local distribution companies that then deliver it to the end users. And so that's really why we had the gas authority created. The cities needed a mechanism to compete in these deregulated markets. And so the cities formed us through the state legislature back in the late 80s. And it basically was to provide them a way to get into the market and look bigger as a competitor. And so our purpose is to find adequate, dependable, economical supplies of natural gas for municipal systems. That's what we do. We're a not-for-profit organization. We can't sell to retail customers, and we can't compete in the pipeline industry. So we have a very narrow focus to support the cities in the way they do business. Here's a picture of all the cities in Georgia, and it looks like we've got the state covered up just with the scale of the map here. But one thing you'll notice is that we're in really the rural areas of Georgia. And when all these systems were built, I think our biggest system was about 2,000 or 3,000 customers. Now we've got some cities that have grown up. We've got Lawrenceville, Beaufort, Austell, here in the neighborhood, Dalton, Cartersville, are pretty sizable natural gas systems from the state of Georgia. They may have 30, 40, 50,000 customers. And in total, there are about 400,000 customers that get gas service from a municipal provider here in Georgia. So pretty sizable footprint in Georgia, but mostly rural. And now that the industry has run out of places in metro areas, they're coming to rural Georgia. And that's back to Matt's point where we're getting these bigger projects in our rural footprint. And I'll come back in a minute and talk about these blue lines I've got circled on the map here. This is just something I wanted to show. I'm sure you've seen this in your other research and meetings, but this is an old map, but this just shows where the conventional natural gas is found and produced here in the United States. And so one thing you'll notice is there's nothing in Georgia. We don't produce natural gas in Georgia. We don't have any production at all except for some renewable resources through renewable natural gas created from farm waste, animal waste, wood waste, those kind of things, but it's very minimal compared to the traditional natural gas resources we have that coming into the state through our pipeline system. Another map here you've probably seen, but this is just the shale resources. And now this is kind of an old story. You know, this came along 2008, 2009, where we were uncovering and discovering these shale resources, unlocking them. And you will notice we do have some shale gas in Northwest Georgia. It's going to be very expensive to get, and it's way down deep in the earth. So these will be some of the last resources that are harvested here in the United States. But it is a lot of natural gas in the United States, over 100 years of resources still available to us here in the United States.
Based upon what we know about that, if they tap into it into based upon what we know about the last map you had up in this gas, you said it's gonna be hard to get to. Is it a first get to, first use type situation? Like if someone taps into it in northern Alabama, can they drain the source from under Georgia?
They don't think so. They think that the sources are locked in these shale formations, these rock formations, and it's very localized production where you have to go in and use the fracking technology, the hydraulic fracturing, to go in and harvest those resources. And they think it can be 80, 160 acres is where they're limiting their resource take. So they believe they've got it honed in where you wouldn't be taking your neighbor's gas, so to speak. I want to switch gears for a second, and as the topic of the last year or so has been data centers, and the more we talk about how much energy these data centers are consuming, the more we've gone back to some of the blocking and tackling of the natural gas industry. And one of the things that has always concerned us is, and I think Dr. Gaddy told this story in your electric meeting, is the direct use versus the indirect use of natural gas. And so what I mean by that is when you're directly using natural gas, you're using it at the appliance or at the burner tip or in the factory, the home or the business. And so we always thought and know that that is a very efficient use of the molecule of natural gas. So in our graphic here, if you have 100 MMBTU, 100 units of natural gas that is harvested in the production area, and then it is transported across our pipeline system, when it gets to a home, business, or factory, there's still 92% of that energy remaining. So the delivery system is very efficient in getting gas to the homes. So if you've got that much energy at your home, then your appliances are going to be much more efficient. On the flip side of that, if you're creating electricity out of another fuel, so you're taking natural gas, you're turning it into electricity in a generating plant, and then moving across the distribution system, and then using it in their home, almost 2/3 of that energy has been used or consumed in the process of getting it to a home. So that's one of the things that we've really thought about over the years, and this is a federal issue. When we have the federal government trying to ban natural gas appliances, the natural gas water heater, the Renai tankless water heater that we make here in Georgia, the federal government tried to ban that as they went out last December. They've also tried to eliminate the furnace that most people buy in Georgia. And so it is an incredibly difficult scenario to justify the attack on some of the in-use appliances that we see from the federal level. I know Georgia's taken, proactive steps to make sure that there's no local and state or agencies eliminating a customer's choice of which fuel they'd like to burn in their home. And so that's one of the very positive things that's happened here in Georgia, is to make sure that the customer's choice is protected in their home of what fuel they'd like to use. And so if you take that scenario and you get it to the homes, we believe that using natural gas in the thermal capacity, if you're heating things up, you're heating your water, heating up factories, using it for cooking and drying and cleaning, that it is a much more efficient way to use the molecule of natural gas. Just some perspective, the data centers that we've been approached by, and when I say approached by, they've come to us and said, we'd like to build local electric generation sites at the data center. And we'd like to burn your natural gas to create that electricity. And I think what's happening is they believe we can do it a little faster than the grid is growing into them. Because what the answer they're getting from the electric utilities is it's going to take some time for us to get there. So this scares us a little bit because we know when the grid grows to them, they'll just switch over to the grid. And so we're being very careful about how we invest in these infrastructure projects to get the natural gas to these facilities. And just some perspective, the 100 megawatt data center that we're looking at says they're going to burn about 18,000 decatherms a day. That's enough natural gas to run 350,000 natural gas water heaters a day. So huge amount of natural gas being used in these data centers. We know they're here to stay. We can't put the phones down, the computers, the AI functions of everything. We know they're here to stay. We've got to grow into them. But is this the most efficient use of the molecule? And I think that's one of the things at the state level we can start asking those questions. One other thing on the efficiency, and it's back to that efficiency scale we looked at before. You know, one electric water heater consumes the same amount of energy as 2.2 natural gas water heaters. So that's another thing. Why is the federal government pushing electric appliances on the consumer? You know, the consumers were pretty quiet about this until they piped up and said, we think we should ban the gas cooktop. And people said, I don't think that's what I'm for. And that's when the tide turned a little bit, because people said, you mean you want to take my gas cooking away? And the federal government said, yeah, maybe. And then there was a backlash. Most people don't know how their water's heated. Let's be frank about it. So they didn't really care if their gas water heater went away. So when they started talking about the cooktop, the consumer woke up and said, what are they trying to do? Because if you look back into the late 90s, 2000s, the first thing they tried to do was ban fracking. And then they have started a process where they're making it so hard for the pipelines to get pipe in the ground. Now, I mean, when I started in this business, the Southern or Transco could announce a pipeline and it would be in the ground complete in 3 years. Now it takes them 7, 8 years to get that same infrastructure in the ground because of the regulatory process, the environmental challenges they have, and some of the lawsuits they have to deal with. And so that's one of the things that we've been dealing with. Back to some of the things Matt was hitting on, funding infrastructure needs. Traditionally, municipal systems have either funded infrastructure projects through reserves or through municipal bonds. And so that's the way we've done it. We have very strict payback analysis and we do these things. There's no tax subsidies that go into these municipal systems. It's all enterprise funds. So they carry themselves and through rates. And so, but Senate Bill 13 was a big lift for the natural gas municipal systems. And I think what we could really use, and Matt hit on this, is an appropriation to fund some of these areas. And we've got the Southwest Georgia section circled there. There is an issue there. And the way pipeline development works is you plan for residential commercial growth. Back to your question earlier, sir, about planning for the future. We do plan for residential commercial growth on a gradual scale. So we'll subscribe to these pipeline projects. But when a data center comes in and said, I want as much gas as you've ever seen in one setting, we aren't planning for that. And so that's one of the issues that we see is we aren't planning for the data centers. We're planning for residential commercial, and we want to grow into that industrial. And to Matt's point also, when industrial comes and say, well, we can serve you, but it might be interruptible. Well, we can start serving them and then build the pipeline infrastructure to start serving them firm down the road. So that's been the way you can grow into those systems. But here you see some areas circled. We've got the middle Georgia area. Right now, we've got about a $50 million project going in the Fort Valley, Warner Robins, Perry area that's going to serve some new industrial load there. Over in East Georgia, you know, all around the Hyundai plant there's a lot of residential commercial coming in over there and support factories. So we've got some needs there. And then up in this part of the world, we've got some needs with some of the big industrial factories coming in here with electric car industry, battery factories and those things. So everywhere we look in Georgia, we could have more infrastructure and we could find a home for that capacity. And the good news is that the pipelines are responding with the Southern Natural expansion. And I know Transco is doing some things as well that I'm sure they'll talk about. But very thankful for their participation here. And I think that's going to be very good news for gas users in Georgia. That's all I had. I'll thank you and take any questions.
Okay. Yes, Chairman Parsons.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I don't know if this is on or not, but I would have saved this question for AGL, but you mentioned a number a while ago. And, you know, over the years, I've gotten so many different estimates about how long resources will still be available, these finite resources that will expire at some point. I think I might have misunderstood you, but I think you said 100 years. Well, 100 years wouldn't get it. I mean, our nuclear is going to last about that long, maybe, but all this investment and relying on natural gas, I mean, if it's only 100, but that must not be. I mean, what do you think? What do you think it would be?
I wouldn't say only 100 years. I say at least 100 years. That's what we know now of proven reserves. I mean, there's still reserves that aren't tapped and aren't proven, like the reserves in Georgia. That's not in that count.
Right.
And so we've got reserves here in Georgia that I mean, in the United States that go well beyond 100 years. But that's what we know now.
Okay.
And so, yeah, this will go a lot longer.
Well, I hope it's a lot longer than that.
Yeah.
The other question is, it's my only other question. The natural gas that we receive in Georgia, is that almost all, or is it all from the Gulf, or do we receive any from those fields up in Ohio and Pennsylvania, West Virginia?
We do receive gas from up north of us, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Ohio, through Transco. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, any other questions on the part of the committee? Well, Scott, let me ask this one question. We talked earlier, and you had mentioned in your slide about GFA funding, of course, Senate Bill 13 we passed last year. Are there projects, I mean, how many, just ballpark, how many projects do you think could go forward if GFA were funded to provide funds for those amongst your membership now?
We've got a short list of about 15 or 20 projects, and we're putting together the price tag on those now. We've got some that are, I say, relatively small, couple of $1 million is relatively small in the infrastructure business. And we've got others that are 10, 20, $30 million. So we're probably in the $100 million number to get, 20 projects done to connect some of these dead ends would be one of the things we would do. And also building local infrastructure and some intrastate assets to move gas between cities.
Okay, so it sounds like most of that is going to be resiliency related, that sort of thing. How much would you say would be that versus prospective new load?
It'd be majorly new load. Resiliency is already there. And just some perspective there, when Hurricane Helene came through, we didn't have major interruptions in our natural gas infrastructure. So that was good news. So the system is resilient. What we do have is some interruptible load, like Matt said, that we could grow into with some firm assets. So we'd have to get back with the committee to put a price tag on that.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if
Yes.
I could just ask one
Yes, go ahead.
follow-up. Scott, thank you so much. Your presentation was awesome. You talked about the projection of residential growth and the demand from a residential perspective. And you said that data centers were not considered in that. Well, data centers probably wasn't on any of our minds about 5, 10 years ago. So it makes me wonder what's coming up 5, 10 years from now that we're not thinking about, because the more we advance as a society, the more we're going to need energy to run this society. Everything is becoming computer-based. Computer-based things are needing energy. You need the electricity, you need the cooling systems, you need the water. So it's going to be a consistent increase. How do we get better at forecasting what we are going to need so that we can better project, like versus putting one pipe in the ground, should we be putting two pipes in the ground while we have the ground open? You know, it just feels like we're so behind the ball on everything, and we need the industry to lead us in that. We need you guys to let us know those projections, but you know, it's not comforting when I hear we didn't consider data centers when we saw computer systems and computer servers and the networking of servers. We should have seen that coming, in my opinion, you know. And so, and it's not on you, but how do we get better as an industry working with our government leaders to prepare us for what's coming? Because if data centers caught us off guard, what's going to catch us off guard in 5 years?
Yeah, I agree with you. And the energy industry is a reactive industry for the most part. We do forecast some conservative growth for residential commercial. But when it comes to these, you know, big mega site energy consumers, I don't think the ratepayers could tolerate, you know, having excess assets that are sitting idle, waiting on the load to be there, because those ratepayers that we have now would be carrying that cost. And I think that would be tough for them to swallow. And our electric and gas rates would be a lot higher because of that. And I know that's why when Alan was talking about being fully subscribed, we want to make sure that those pipes are being paid for, because the gas authority members are subscribing to those projects as we go forward and can pass through those costs to ratepayers that we have now.
So when we talk about costs, infrastructure is a big part of the cost consideration, right? So when I looked at your comparison between gas and electricity, and you talked about how efficient gas is when it gets to the end versus electricity, but wouldn't you agree it's a hell of a lot cheaper to run a wire across a pole than it is to dig a 10 to 42-inch pipe in the ground? So some of that is also access capacity too, right?
Well, we don't have a lot of excess capacity in municipal systems. And I know the interstate pipelines don't have a lot of excess capacity in their systems because these expansions are coming along to fill that gap.
Mhm.
And the way, it's the way I've always thought about it is pipes are a finite size. And then the demand becomes, you know, on the other side, demand shows up. So we have to build pipes that are bigger. And so we have these big step ups in infrastructure. We just can't gradually grow pipes and, you know, do it easily. We have to take big steps forward and big price tags for these big infrastructure projects.
And a lot of our energy systems, they're kind of diversifying, if you will, cross netting within each other, because we have a lot of our electrical companies now that are utilizing gas to run their systems to create electricity. And so based upon your model today, it would question the efficiency of that if we're using gas, which is supposed to be very efficient to create electricity, which becomes less efficient as you maneuver through the system. You know, you have to look at all this in a holistic perspective, right? Because it all ties together. And we're listening to many conversations throughout the state, and we're trying to make this entire picture tied together. And I don't want it to appear to be one industry against the other. What I want to learn is how are we working collectively to make sure we're securing the future of Georgia?
Yes, sir. I agree 100%. And I'm not sure that, I think we may have skipped over this slide, but in one of my slides, we've done the math, and for every 100,000 natural gas water heaters that are being used in Georgia, that avoids about 30 or 40 megawatts of capacity that we need to be building. And so the more people that are using natural gas to heat things up, the less generating capacity we need. And so that will allow that generating capacity to be used in data centers and other areas that are big power users.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to invite Josh Browning with Williams to come to the podium. Mr. Browning, you may proceed when you're ready.
All right, thank you so much. Well, Mr. Chairman and other members of the committee, want to appreciate and thank you all for allowing us to come in and talk. And I want to tell you all a little bit more about the Williams companies and how we serve the state of Georgia. I'm Josh Browning. I'm Vice President of Commercial for Williams. Williams is it's over a 100-year-old company, and it's primarily focused on natural gas infrastructure, from gathering to processing to the transmission and storage of natural gas. And we've been in the state of Georgia for over 70 years. Again, as we heard from Kinder Morgan earlier, Williams is a major infrastructure company. We transport and process about a third of the natural gas in the United States every day. We have about 33,000 miles of pipeline serving 24 states from the East Coast all the way up to the Pacific Northwest and down to the Gulf Coast. And what I'll call out on the map up there, and as Scott and others had referenced, the Transco system. That's a system that has multiple lines running from the Gulf Coast all the way up to the Northeast. Again, in Williams, we don't produce, primarily, we don't produce the gas. We're not the end users of the gas, but we're really in the middle infrastructure, really trying to gather the gas, to process it and transport it. And in the state of Georgia, that's really what we do is we bring gas into the state of Georgia from multiple directions to be able to use for power generation, for residential, commercial, and industrial use. The Transco system, it's the largest pipeline system in the United States. It's one of the fastest growing pipelines as well. We'll get into some of the dynamics of what caused that growth on the system. It's roughly 10,000 miles of pipeline, 62 compressor stations, 5 storage facilities. It provides gas to roughly 50% of the gas consumed in New York City, 90% of the gas in the Carolinas, but also it can bring in roughly 63% of the gas into the state of Georgia. As we heard earlier, Georgia does not produce natural gas right now, so it needs large infrastructure to be able to bring in that gas from where it is produced. Traditionally, Transco was developed and it gathered gas in the Gulf Coast region in Texas and brought it up through the Southeast, the Mid-Atlantic, and the Northeast. And so the traditional flow of the system was from the south to the north. But as we'll see, and as where the natural gas production, where Scott mentioned earlier, where gas is being produced, and that shale kind of revolution that we saw, the system can now bring in gas and is bidirectional. So it can flow from the south to the north, but also from the north to the south. And so it has an ability to bring in gas from both directions into the state of Georgia. Its currently design capacity is 20.6 BCF a day. To put that on perspective, in the United States, it uses roughly about 100 BCF a day of gas. That's growing right now. So, you know, Transco on any given day can transport about 20% of the natural gas that's consumed in the United States. Storage, I also want to touch on storage because this is a key component. It's not only the natural gas transmission linear infrastructure, but also storage is a key element for balancing markets, but also providing reliability. As the utilities, and we'll talk about more on power generation, and there's a baseload component with power generation from natural gas, but there's an intermittency, an ability to respond as the load and renewables kick online. Natural gas and that storage component to be able to handle that variability and intermittency. You need linear infrastructure, but also storage to be able to balance that out. Gas is produced essentially ratable. That means it comes into the system on an even flow rate throughout the day. It is consumed and the demand is very much variable on the pipeline, some more than others, but power generation and specifically natural gas, we see that variability. And we'll have some charts in a few minutes to kind of demonstrate some of that variability. But storage plays a key role in order to provide that reliably and be able to meet some of that variability the stress that it can put on the natural gas systems. So Williams within Georgia, again, this is the Transco system. We've been in the state for roughly 70 years. We serve the likes of AGL and Scott and the Gas Authority have been great customers of ours for a long time, but also large electric power utilities such as Georgia Power and Oglethorpe. We have roughly 90 employees in the state, 5 compressor stations, about a little over 800 miles of pipelines. Again, if you go back to the map I showed earlier, there's a single blue line that you see here. What's in the ground are multiple lines. There's 30, 36, 42 inch. There's multiple lines in the ground through the Transco system. It allows gas to come in from both directions. That provides a bit of reliability so that you're not relying on just a single line system to bring gas into the state. The growth on the system, as talked about back in about 2010, and Scott mentioned the unlocking a lot of gas in the United States. We call it the shale boom, the shale revolution. Hydraulic fracturing for natural gas has been around for decades. It's not a new concept. What happened was improvements and advancements to be able to unlock that gas in an economic way with a lot of the drilling techniques and the laterals that are associated with that really allowed us to unlock a lot of gas within the United States, not just in the Gulf Coast area, and it provided a lot of opportunity to transport gas across the system. So since 2010, the Transco system has more than doubled in size, and it's continuing to grow. And if you look at the circle charts at the top, Transco was originally developed to serve primarily LDCs, local distribution companies. This is your residential, your commercial, and even industrial. Over time, the mix of the customer base has changed. And so now we are seeing a lot of power generation being supplied and generate power using natural gas. And so the customer mix has really been balanced out over time. And that's been a lot of the growth since 2010 has been to serve power generation. Projects, taking a step back, we've had a lot of projects, but these are the projects that we've placed in service, but also that we're in development right now as we go through in various stages. That could be from we've entered into commercial agreements with our customers so that we can start the permitting process, in the middle of the permitting process, or in construction. 3 projects that directly are serving Georgia right now. October 1st, we just placed our Alabama to Georgia connector. That was about 65,000 a day of new natural gas supply that could come into the state of Georgia from Alabama. Two other projects that we're working on right now, just as Kinder Morgan mentioned about a large project, we also have a large project that is bringing gas from, it starts in Virginia, and that accesses gas from gas being produced in Pennsylvania and West Virginia that comes into the system there. That's called our Southeast Supply Enhancement. It's about a 1.6 BCF a day project. Roughly 1.2 BCF a day can reach down into Georgia with that project. We're targeting a late 2027 in-service date associated with that. And then another project is our Dalton lateral. That's the lateral that comes north off of our main line up through Dalton. And that's another expansion project. We have commercial agreements. We're getting ready to start into the permitting process, and that'll serve some additional power generation up through that corridor.
Quick question about your Alabama to Georgia connected. Let me let the blue. Yeah, I was gonna ask, how does that help in our state? But I assume you would say it increases capacity.
That's right.
And so my next question then, if that is your answer, is where is this capacity coming from if the pipe is originating in Alabama? How is that happening?
Yeah, great question. So what you're seeing here is the infrastructure that Williams has. But there is a massive amount of infrastructure that other companies and other infrastructure. And so within close to the Alabama-Mississippi border, there's other infrastructure that's bringing gas into the Transco system there. It's a very liquid point. And so what that is doing is, as Scott mentioned, we're effectively sold out. So on a firm capacity basis, there's not just excess capacity that's really sitting around. Now, if our firm shippers are not using it, it can certainly be accessed through an interruptible basis. But what this is doing is allowing and expanding on a firm basis to be able to serve the likes of the Gas Authority, of Oglethorpe, the city of Beaufort. It's allowing those shippers to be able to go back to a liquid supply point, to be able to go buy gas there and have that firm space available in the pipe to transport it over into Georgia.
And I appreciate you for explaining that, because we've talked about Georgia demands and we've talked about the maxing of capacity in our state, but what we haven't spoke about is regionally what's around us to tap into to help relieve that demand. And so I'm hearing you say in this Mississippi, Alabama area, there is supply that's not being utilized to where you can build a new connector to bring more of that to Georgia.
That's right. And we'll tell you, I've got a slide in here showing you where the production is.
Okay.
And effectively what's needed. And as we move forward, as energy continues to grow and natural gas being a large part of that mix, we need infrastructure to be able to move those molecules from the production over to the states of Georgia that are growing and need that for end use, for power generation to industrial growth. And so there is a tremendous amount of pipeline infrastructure and a grid out there. And a lot of our systems are connected together. And so we can get gas off of other systems, or we can reach back into where the gathering and processing of that natural gas is and move it over to the where it's needed. And that really transitions as we look forward and we think about infrastructure. You know, what's top of mind for us is we need to be able to provide it that it's clean, but also reliable and affordable. And we believe that natural gas is a major component of that. And we touched on the abundant as we talk about the natural gas. It is certainly, there's a tremendous amount of resources that's in the ground. Easily a century's worth of natural gas resources out there. And then there's even more that's unproven that, and it really gets into an economic and cost perspective. But as we advance technology and as we continue to bring economies to scale to be able to unlock the natural gas, I'm sure that we will be able to tap into additional resources and have natural gas as a major component of the energy mix moving forward. And this is the map that I was referencing. You know, where is the gas produced? And so as we think about the Transco system, the benefit is it resides and it where it traverses, it goes by, I would say, 3 of the major, if not the most prolific natural gas regions where gas is produced. You have the Permian Basin in Texas, you have the Haynesville Formation in Louisiana, and in the Northeast, we have the Marcellus and Utica, which is in Pennsylvania and West Virginia primarily. And the Transco system can receive gas from all those regions through other infrastructure or directly connected, and be able to bring it into the state of Georgia and expand our system from the south coming over into Georgia, or from the north coming down into the state. As we talk about demand, the power, and we talked about data centers, we are certainly seeing this across the board, not only in the state of Georgia, but in the mid-Atlantic and all the way up and down the Transco system. The demand, the growth in electricity and to serve these data centers, but also just the transportation and other avenues that get electrified. The need for electricity is growing tremendously, and natural gas is a large component of that. It's something that is readily available, can be deployed and be able to meet the need in a very efficient and a quick way. And so we think that natural gas is going to be a major component of this. Back to the variability on gas and the need as we talk about storage. This is ERCOT, so it's back in Texas, and it has wind and solar mix. You know, Georgia will be primarily solar that's part of this. But you can see the lighter blue, that's natural gas and the variability. And this is just a typical gas day on the system. And what the pipeline system has to be able to do as that load variability ramps up and ramps down, it needs to use the line pack within the system to be able to help respond to that, but also access to storage. And as renewables come into play, that just adds more variability, more intermittency, and natural gas is a great source to be able to respond to that, but it needs the infrastructure to be able to do that. It needs to be able to have the access to the storage and the pipeline capacity in order to meet that demand and the variability that we're seeing especially as renewables become into a bigger part of the mix. This is just a graph demonstrating since 2013 to 2024, the demand for gas has grown by roughly 50%. The linear infrastructure has only grown by about 26%, and storage, we've only developed roughly 2% of additional storage. So as we think about providing the reliability and what's needed going forward, we need more infrastructure in order to do that. We haven't necessarily kept up with where the demand has been going. So that's a priority of ours, and I think it's what's needed to provide the reliability going forward. The story, we talk about storage. This is just really, if you go to the map, if you look at the green triangles, that's where salt domes are located. So natural gas can be stored underground many different ways, but one part of that is through salt formations and salt caverns. These are really the best way to be able to respond to some of that intermittency, but it also is where the geology is located. The benefit to Georgia is you're not too far away from where the geology is located. It's primarily around the Gulf Coast, but that's the best way to, from a storage perspective, to be able to meet the needs of the intermittency of the power demand. In the Northeast, you have a lot of depleted reservoirs that's old, where it used to store natural gas. You can put gas in and gas out, but it's a little bit harder. It doesn't come in and out as quick as a salt cavern. But that's just wanted to give a landscape of where is the geology to be able to support the need for additional storage. The benefit is we have a lot of these salt domes where we can now start to develop more storage to be able to meet the needs going forward. Again, this is as we look forward, we have projects that are in flight right now, and we're building more capacity to bring more supply into the state of Georgia, but more infrastructure. And as the demand continues to grow, we work with our customers closely. We don't go through an integrated resource plan or an IRP, but we work closely with our customers, and we provide input to them as they work through their plans to let them know, how long is it going to take to build the infrastructure? What are the costs going to be associated with that? But we have opportunities to continue to not only grow the storage, but also the infrastructure to bring that gas into the state and be able to feed into the other natural gas pipelines that really distribute it through the state of Georgia. So with that, that's the end of my presentation. Again, I really appreciate and thank you all for giving me the time to come up here, but would love, Mr. Chairman, to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on the part of the committee? I have a couple. Are there anywhere in your service territory that you're working at that you're doing co-location of storage with energy production facilities, with like electrical facilities, that sort of thing?
We can currently we are not right now, and so most storage is held underground in these formations, and so it depends on where the geology is located to be able to handle the storage. Now, there are some above ground solutions such as liquefied natural gas. You could put an LNG facility next to where some of these demand centers are to be able to provide some of that storage and meet that. But we'll work closely with our customers to understand what they need, what their requirements are, and then the cost component to either access the storage, underground storage where it's located and be able to transport it over, or to be able, if we could put in above ground facilities next to it, if that makes sense, we're more than happy to do that.
Yeah, okay. The reason I asked that question is one of the discussions that we've had in our previous meeting and between has been related to, coal plants. You usually have about a 30-day supply of fuel on site. Nuclear, you've got possibly 20 years of fuel located on site, that sort of thing. Most of the combined cycle gas turbine installations are pretty much on demand. And, looking at it from a national security standpoint, that may be something we need to, as a nation, need to look at going forward. So.
Yeah, there are certainly options out there. And we're more than happy to work with our customers to be able to provide that reliability and access to supply for the security and needs that they need to move forward.
I noticed on the graph you had up showing your capacity going into the future out to around 2030 or so, there was a big jump in 27 and 28.
Yeah.
I'm assuming that's those expansion projects
That's right. I mean, I would say that one of the largest jumps in there, the largest project that we have right now is called our Southeast Energy project. And that's going to bring molecules down into the state of Georgia. Roughly 1.2 BCF can reach the state of Georgia for the needs here. And that's the largest project that we have across the system right now. And that's what's causing that jump out in 2027.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, one quick follow-up question on the leakage, possibility of leakage in these underground storage facilities. How are you monitoring that? And, are we sure that this is the safest way to store?
Yeah, I think there's a couple ways. One is if it's a depleted reservoir, it held natural gas before. So it's a proven reservoir that can hold natural gas. And there's a very robust process to ensure that any wells that have been drilled, they've been appropriately capped and abandoned if needed. But then there's also monitoring to ensure that if there are any methane leaks, that we can catch it and address it appropriately. But it's very much a proven concept to store it underground because it was stored for centuries before. And then in the salt caverns themselves, these caverns are very deep within the earth. You drill down into it and you effectively put water in there, create a cavern, but there's a tremendous amount of salt that's around it. And we continue to monitor around where the well is that goes down to access these caverns that you leach out underground.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just out of curiosity, what's the lead time from the time you identify the need for a project to the time you're actually producing, I guess, on your pipeline? Yeah,
that's a permitting reform as we talk about moving forward and how do you plan and how do you react. And as Scott and others said, we're very much dependent upon our customers to tell us what their needs are. And so that process can take 4 to 5 years to get from commercialization to actually putting a shovel in the ground and adding the infrastructure that's needed. If we can continue to advance on some of the permitting reform and get it back to where Scott mentioned, hey, it was 3 years, then we don't have to predict as much out into the future and we could be a little bit more reactive on being able to meet the needs as it continues to grow and transform.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I asked the question is that we're trying to figure out ways to help you be more reactive. If as demand grows or ebbs and flows, I guess we want to make sure we're doing the things we need to do to set you up to be successful. So thank you.
I appreciate that. Yeah, we have to go through at the federal, the state, and the local level to get permits. So anywhere through that process, we can help streamline. We certainly want to do our due diligence and what's needed to work with the local communities to be able to build the infrastructure. But the more we can streamline that process is the better that we can be equipped to respond to the changing needs that are out there.
Okay. Anyone else? All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Next, we're going to invite some guests from north of us. We do have some of our electric membership cooperatives in Georgia that are served and get a large portion of their power from the Tennessee Valley Authority. But to kind of follow up on Representative Reese's questions earlier about the fact that 5, 6, 10 years ago, data centers weren't really a thing that we would have to worry about. I mean, it was projected into the future, but we didn't realize the demand and the need until now. By the same scenario, we talk about natural gas today and the supply for that. 20, 30 years ago, natural gas for electrical purposes was primarily peaking generation in single cycle combustion turbines. So technology advances. Not only does the demand and need, but also the supply and different methodologies of providing energy and electricity. So with that, I'd like to invite Scott Honeywell with TVA. Mr. Honeywell, if you want to come to the podium and just begin at your pleasure, sir.
All right, so I'm Scott Honeywell. I'm the Vice President of the new nuclear program for the Tennessee Valley Authority. And, one thing that I'll talk about is kind of the history of TVA. So we are a federal corporation, but we're an independent federal corporation. One of the reasons I can be here today with the government shutdown is that we don't receive any appropriations from the federal government. We're fully self-funded from the electricity we sell. We were formed in 1933 as part of FDR's New Deal. And beyond electricity, we also have a series of dams control the river in our area. Part of our purpose was flood control along the Tennessee River. For North Georgia, we supply electricity. We have 2 reservoirs, 2 hydroelectric dams on those. We've got Notley and Blue Ridge. We have 9,600 acres of public land and 273 miles of shoreline, and we serve about 330,000 customers in North Georgia. So when we look at our future, one thing I'll get out of the way right up front. You're not going to hear me say anything bad about natural gas, right? We're not trying to replace natural gas with nuclear. There's so much demand out there. I think there's going to be plenty of need for both natural gas and electricity, and I think nuclear is part of that mix. So we serve that. This is our service territory. Our service territory was established in 1959. In 1959, when we became self-funding, there were several things that happened. One of those was the fence. The fence is the area we're allowed to sell electricity to customers. And that was established by anybody we were selling electricity to in 1959. That's the region we can sell electricity to today, and that has not changed. The other thing that was established in 1959 was a debt limit. That debt limit has been raised 4 times in the history of TVA. 3 of those times were in the 1970s. The last time was in 1979 when it was raised to $30 billion. So $30 billion in 1979 is equivalent to $140 billion today. That becomes important to us because we have lost $110 billion of capital capacity. And I'll talk about that in a little while and how that impacts what we do and how we're doing it. All right, so as we look at the future and what we're going to do to meet the growing energy demands, and the people went before me did a very good job of explaining, we need more power, more energy, whether it's natural gas for heat or electricity for other purposes. There's an absolute need, right? So, we look at those renewables, wind and solar, but those are very limited in what they're able to do, right? They are not good for baseload or dispatchable power. They're intermittent. The wind's got to blow or the wind's got to shine. Even if you build a large amount of battery storage for solar or wind, it still has limitations on it. I did a back of the envelope calc one day. If you wanted to replace all of the electricity in the country that's produced by fossil right now and replace it with solar panels, you'd have to cover the entire state of Tennessee with solar panels. No roads, no rivers, no trees, nothing, just solar panels. And that would only produce electricity when the sun shone. So now if you want to do it 24/7 with battery storage, you'd have to cover about eight times the size of the state of Tennessee with batteries and solar panels. And even then, that would get you about 5 days. If the sun didn't shine on that 6th day, again, you'd have no power, right? So it's got some limitations. So TVA is looking at what else can we deploy? There's really only 2 practical forms of electrical generation: natural gas and nuclear, right? We don't foresee building any more coal plants. We don't foresee building any more hydroelectric dams. So really, when we're looking at what the future holds, it's either going to be gas or electric. And for TVA, it's really going to be both. We've got multiple gas plants in the pipeline right now, and we're exploring, how nuclear could fit into that mix. And part of that is looking at all of the different technologies. You may have heard some terms around new nuclear for small modular reactors, Gen 3 plus and Gen 4 reactors. The only difference between those 2 types of reactors is how the reactor core is cooled. All of the commercial reactors operating in the United States today are cooled with water. Gen 3 plus reactors are all cooled with water. A Gen 4 reactor is cooled with anything other than water. It could be high temperature gas, it could be sodium, it could be a salt, liquid metal, anything other than water. So that's your cheat sheet on the differences in the technologies. This is a graph I borrowed from the DOE, and this is how much electricity you can generate per acre per year from different forms of generation. The bar on the left is nuclear, and over on the right is solar and wind. And I really point that out because a lot of places I go, everyone thinks that solar and wind are the solution, right? They're part of the solution. They have a role to play, but nuclear, natural gas are really going to be the backbone of the electrical grid going forward. So one of the things that we're looking at is where are we going to go build nuclear plants within the Tennessee Valley. So we've gone through an exercise at looking at the property we already own. And we own a large amount of property, quite a few sites where we had coal plants that have been shut down, former nuclear sites. And when I say former nuclear sites, back in the 70s, we had 17 nuclear plants under construction. Ultimately completed and operated 7 of those. So we have sites within the valley that were intended for nuclear. The one on the left here is Hartsville in north central Tennessee. Hartsville, that cooling tower on the left, you may have seen in the headlines here about 2 weeks ago, we demolished that cooling tower after we did a structural assessment of it and determined that it would not be suitable for future use for any generation at the site. The site on the right is Bellefonte in northeast Alabama. If you were to drive into Bellefonte today, you would think you were pulling into an operating nuclear plant. When we stopped construction in the 1980s, Unit 1 was 92% complete and had fuel on site. The decision was made not to finish Bellefonte for a variety of reasons. However, it is a large area. So we have about 1,600 acres at Bellefonte and about that same at Hartsville. We have other sites within the valley that we're considering for new nuclear. The other thing that we're trying to do is figure out what the best technology is. And I talked about the light water. I talked about the Gen 4 reactors. Globally, between small modular reactors and micro reactors. And a micro reactor typically is anything that produces 50 megawatts electric or less per unit. A small modular reactor is about 50 megawatts up to 300, although you'll find some that are 400 to 500 megawatts electric. Traditional nuclear is that's over 500 megawatts electric. And we're trying to evaluate those different technologies. All of them have been used at some point in our history, whether it's a high temperature gas reactor or sodium liquid metal. most of them in the 50s and 60s, some into the 70s as test reactors through the Department of Energy. And many of these designs are based on that technology that was available in the 50s and 60s that scientists have unearthed that old information, resurrected it, and have designed new nuclear plants around it. So what's the best technology? And I'll kind of phrase that and I'll ask you a question. What's the best ball? Is it a baseball, a basketball, a football? Which one of those is the best ball? It really depends on what you want to do with it, right? If you want to play golf, don't bring a basketball. It's going to be a rough day. So we're doing the same thing. Natural gas, one of the slides earlier said, petrochemical production. It's used in glass manufacturing. It's used to create heat for those processes. Well, some of the reactors out there, like a high temperature gas reactor or sodium reactor, also operate at elevated temperatures, and they're also well suited to produce heat. Kind of the difference is typically a nuclear reactor is a pretty big thing. Even a small modular reactor starting at 50 megawatts electric, that's about 150 megawatts thermal. That's a pretty large producer. Most enterprises don't need 100 megawatts, 150 megawatts of heat, right? So if you're going to use a nuclear reactor for heat, you're probably going to be a big petrochemical plant or a large glass factory. We're not going to supply it to a lot of the other industries that you see. The other thing we look at is commercial viability. The best technology may not ultimately be the dominant technology, the one that wins. And there's probably enough gray hair in the room. I can compare VHS to Betamax, right? Betamax is arguably a better technology. Many of you may not have even heard of it. 7 frames per second capture rate on a videotape for Betamax, 6 frames per second for VHS. So the quality difference was perceptible. Betamax is really a much better quality picture. However, that extra frame per second meant that for the same amount of tape in a cassette, you could get less video time. Ultimately, you could record a 90-minute movie on a single VHS tape, whereas Betamax, you'd have to eject the tape, put another tape in, and lose about a minute of the movie while you were doing that. So commercially, VHS won. Ultimately, didn't matter because DVD came along and got rid of VHS practically. But it didn't hang around very long until Blu-ray came along, right? Blu-ray, much better technology, put DVD out of business. But I'll challenge you, when was the last time any of you went and bought a Blu-ray, right? We're all streaming now. So, what does the next 5 years hold? I've heard that asked. That's tough to predict. If you go talk to the hyperscalers, their vision's about 3 years out, 5 years on the most outside edge of what they're doing. They're not thinking out beyond that. Some of these car companies on this slide were the Model T competitors in 1911 when Ford created the Model T. Most of these companies you probably never heard of. The others were acquired by another larger company. And so when I say that there's 100 designs of reactors globally, I do not believe that you will see mass-produced 100 different types of nuclear reactors going forward. You're going to see some consolidations, some bankruptcies. We've already begun to see that. A couple of the companies that I'm familiar with are no longer in business or have been bought by another company. All right, so this slide's in the packet. I'm not going to speak to it, but this is just showing you the temperatures that some of the reactors operate at and some of the industries that use process heat and what temperatures they require. It's just another way of showing you that, hey, high temperature gas and some of these high temperature reactors are well suited for some industries. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about what we've got going on in Tennessee at our Clinch River site. Clinch River site's located in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. Oak Ridge is very much a nuclear hub and growing every day. It's got the Oak Ridge National Labs, the Y-12 complex, Centrus Energy, TriSo-X are fuel manufacturers. Arano's a fuel supplier. You've got Type 1 Energy, which is a fusion developer that is looking to put a prototype at our Bull Run former coal plant site. Just lots, and I'll tell you, the slide's already out of date. There are other companies that have come into the area. Oklo's announced a fuel recycling facility in the Tennessee Valley. And we've signed an MOU with Entra One about possibly deploying new scale reactors within the Tennessee Valley. These are a couple of pictures of the Clinch River site taken probably around 1985. In the early 80s, we contracted with the Department of Energy to construct a breeder reactor at this site. Now, this site originally was part of the Manhattan Project. Then the Atomic Energy Commission had the property. TVA acquired the Clinch River site in 3 different actions in the 1950s in support of the Melton Hill project. Melton Hill is a dam on the Clinch River just upstream of this property that TVA built. That's how we acquired the property after construction of the dam. It just sat there until this breeder reactor project. And it's hard to see in the pictures, but up along the top of those are the very large yellow construction equipment. They're big bulldozers and dump trucks there. That's to give you some scales to just how large this excavation was. This was a DOE project subject to federal appropriations. And if you've ever seen the federal funding cycle, it comes and goes, gets very political. Ultimately, President Reagan canceled the project. And after we'd excavated the dirt, we were paid to put the dirt back in the hole. So if you're to drive out there today and look at the Clinch River, and this is a slide just showing where the Clinch River is in relation to Oak Ridge and the fact that we've got an early site permit for the site from the NRC. It's the first and only one in the country for small modular reactors. And I was going to say one other thing about the site. If you were to go out there today, you drive down a gravel road, there'd be some trees, most of them not very large. They're trees that grew up after this project. When we put the dirt back in the hole, we didn't completely fill it in. We just took those vertical walls and made a 1-to-1 slope down. So you'd see some trees in there. We've started to cut those trees down. Got several fields in the area and some construction trailers. More recently, we've expanded the road. We've reconnected a potable water line that was there from the 80s for this project. We've put in 3-phase power to the site in preparation for either a nuclear reactor here or any other generation project we might do in the future. So the licensing approach, I'm not going to spend really any time on this because this will be much more interested to someone that's interested in nuclear power in general. But we used the Part 50 process. That's a 2-part process. It's what all of the nuclear plants in the country are licensed under, with the exception of Plant Vogtle 3 and 4. They were licensed under the Part 52 process. Lots of learnings out of there, why probably the Part 50 process is a better process the first time you go to build a particular technology. Oh, I apologize. Somehow this slide got turned 90 degrees, but that's the slide that shows the Clinch River site. The 2 yellow boxes there, proposed unit 1 and 2 location. That orange red box there is the excavation. All right, so this is a slide just talks about small modular reactors versus micro reactors. And to give you an idea, Plant Vogtle 3 and 4, Westinghouse AP1000 units produce probably between 1,100 and 1,200 megawatts electric. The unit we're looking at, the Clinch River site, 300 megawatts electric. All right, so I'll talk about that for just a moment. It's the GE Vernova Hitachi Nuclear Energy BWRX 300. The BWR boiling water reactor. The X is the 10th generation of BWR designs by GE. 300 megawatts electric, nominal design. Some of the things that attracted us to this particular technology over some of the Gen 4s and some of the other Gen 3s when we were originally looking at this is the long history that GE has of designing boiling water reactors. The fuel, it uses the exact same fuel as we're using in our Browns Ferry nuclear plants. We have 3 GE boiling water reactors that we operate in Alabama, exact same fuel. So a lot, we thought, more tried and true components in the BWRX 300. This is a list, it uses passive safety systems. So on the right is a list of equipment that you will find in a typical boiling water reactor that the BWRX does not have. And I put this list up really for the people that have worked at boiling water reactors. I spent 5 years as engineering director at Browns Ferry. And if I didn't have these systems on the right, my job would have been easy, right? Many of these systems are ones that, either because of the high cost of maintenance or the, unreliability, many of these components are on the non-nuclear side, but they cause issues with the plant that take, time and money to resolve. A lot of fine print here. TVA has a lot of collaborations going on in the area of nuclear power. We've got the technology collaboration agreement that's between GE, TVA, Ontario Power Generation in Canada, and Orlen Synthos Green Energy. That's where we are funding the design of the BWRX 300, the standard plant design. And the standard plant design is about 60% of a nuclear plant. The other 40% are the things that you have to design based on where in the country you put that plant. Cooling towers, intake pumping station, switch yard, things like that. They're very site specific. We've partnered with Kairos Power. Kairos Power is building their Hermes test reactor in Oak Ridge. We help them during their licensing process. I sit on the KPO MATA group, which is a utility panel that helps advise them. We go out and visit their sites once a year and talk through what their plans are and help advise them. We're on several others, Holtec, NewScale, other advisory committees throughout. We have signed an MOU I mentioned earlier with Oklo. Oklo is looking to recycle, reprocess nuclear fuel that's already been used in a reactor. We have spent nuclear fuel, so we're talking with Oklo and with some other companies about the potential for them taking that, recycling it, and being able to use it in reactors again going forward. So in closing, TVA's got a strategic plan to meet the growing demand in the Valley. We're looking at all forms of generation that we do think that nuclear will likely be a part of that mix going forward. That's all I have, and I will open it up for any questions.
Okay, Chairman Workheiser.
Thank you. You mentioned a couple of MOUs, collaboration, didn't hear any. Is there a date that this unit is going to be up? Or is it?
So yes and no. The board has not authorized the project, right? So the final investment decisions, what you hear many people speak to. Right now, we don't have a quorum for our board of directors. Our board of directors are nominated by the president and confirmed by the Senate. The president fired several of our board members several months ago. So right now we're operating without a board quorum. So we could not make that decision going
Okay,
forward.
so let me interrupt you.
Yep.
So we got 5 states looking at it. You're one of them. While China has 24 under construction right now, India 8, South Korea, Turkey. I mean, we're not even in the top 10. So is that the holdup? Is the administration, because we've had in the last 30 years, plenty of both administrations. I mean, Canada, I've been to their SMR site. It seems like, I know there's a lot of bad taste because of what the last one that was built here, but that was 30 years ago. In nuclear, and I'm for all the above too, but nuclear is the answer. If you look at these numbers of the power usage, what's the holdup?
Well, there are several. The first is, with the exception of the Westinghouse AP1000s were deployed at Vogtle, none of the designs for the small modular reactors are complete. TVA has submitted the construction permit application to the NRC. We did that this May for the Clinch River project. It will take the NRC about 18 months to review that. They expect to get back to us in December of 26. Now, I will tell you the 18 months is down from our 3 to 3.5 year time we'd estimated for them to review it. So the NRC's done a lot to shorten their time frame. For TVA to do more faster, I will point back to our debt limit. Our debt limit at 30 billion, we currently have about $24 billion of debt on the books. We're looking at building multiple gas plants and perhaps a pump storage facility. We don't have enough on the credit card to go build a fleet of nuclear reactors. So we're looking at what other ways could we do to deploy nuclear in the valley? And that's, some of these MOUs are exploring those ways. But the number one reason why aren't you seeing more SMRs? The designs aren't done. AP1000s bankrupted companies in South Carolina, bankrupted companies in Georgia deploying those. I do think it's significantly de-risked now that they've completed and operated them, that the next set wouldn't have most of those risks involved. But when you look at the cost to do a small modular reactor, somewhere between $1 and $7 billion, compared to do a plant Vogtle, which is probably 10 to 15 billion or more, the financial risk for companies is significant. And most utilities don't have the capacity, the capital to build like they did in, quite frankly, in the 60s and 70s when they were building coal and nuclear.
All right, well, it's frustrating.
I agree.
It's like building a prison. Kia can build a plant in 18 months, and it takes us 3 years to put together a building that's already built out in Texas. Go ahead.
Chairman Parsons?
No.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for that presentation. A lot of information. I'm trying to kind of analyze it in my mind. But related to this committee and the mission it has, as I understand it anyway, for that part of North Georgia up there that TVA provides power for, a relatively small part, but so do you think that TVA is okay to continue providing power up there? Is there I'm trying to think back to things you said. Is there any significant issue that's would cause there not to be enough energy up there, not enough electricity provided by TVA in that part of Georgia that you provide electricity to?
The only limitation would be the limitation that we're seeing valley-wide, which is more demand than supply for electricity, right? Right now, we've not had to turn any customers down, but the signals that are out there for data centers is significant. AI data centers is significant. And there may be a time, and I'll tell you, when it comes to saying no to a customer, we'll say no to a data center before we will some industrial or manufacturing facility. And one of the reasons is when you look at the number of jobs that a data center creates, and part of our mission is to bring economic prosperity. A data center may hire 100 people or so during construction, and then after construction may employ 20 people for that data center. We'd much rather have an industry in there that is hiring 600 people, right? And those jobs are continuous.
Other questions? I have a couple. The facilities you referred to that construction was stopped on, is there any active effort to possibly restart those projects?
So I would say restart, no, especially Hartsville. Bellefonte has been through a couple of cycles where we intended to finish it and then decided not to finish it. So we still have the asset. It's in our inventory. There's no active project on it. But I'll tell you, one of the things I'm doing is providing options for TVA for nuclear. And sure, there's nothing that's off the table when it comes to what could we do to deploy nuclear, whether it's new nuclear plants at a site like Bellefonte or Hartsville or one of our coal plants, or perhaps repurposing. We do have the turbine and generator installed on both unit 1 and 2. We could make what's called a synchronous condenser out of that generator to help support the grid in that area without finishing the nuclear plant.
Okay. Overall, from a capacity and demand standpoint, and I understand you work in this particular field, but for TVA, while you do only supply a small portion, TVA only supplies a small portion of Georgia, we are all interconnected. And I know that there's PPA contracts and that sort of thing and agreements, reciprocal agreements with all utilities throughout the Southeast. How does TVA stand right now outside of these anonymous large load customers that may come in as far as service to your territory?
I would say that we're on the same footing as Southern Company, Entergy, any of the Southeast. I think after more than 15 years of flat or negative load growth, we were all surprised at the magnitude. We all anticipated an increase in demand. None of us predicted the rate of rise of demand in the region. So we've got sufficient generation. We do, we're very fortunate in that, when we need power, Southern tends to have an excess. And when Southern needs power, we tend to have an excess. And so we're able to share electricity. If the entire Southeast of the United States were to have a long period of either extreme hot or extreme cold, I think all the utilities would be challenged. And that's where, we talk about the interruptible agreement with our industrial partners. We would trigger those, as would Southern and Entergy and the other companies.
Okay. Are y'all looking at any partnership programs and with these SMR programs or anything that you're doing where you would not only provide or generate electricity, but also provide process heat?
So we don't have anything in active discussions, but that is one of the things that's an option going forward.
Okay. And I noticed the one project you're talking about, the GE, the BWR 300X, I believe is what it was, or something to that effect. Of the other coolant technologies that y'all are there anything that you see that's promising?
Yeah, several of them are promising. I can't speak to any one over any other at this point publicly, but what I will tell you is that we do have a power purchase agreement with Kairos Power. I mentioned Hermes going in Oak Ridge. Kairos also has a construction permit for Hermes 2, which is still a test reactor, but they're going to hook up a turbine generator to it to produce electricity, up to 50 megawatts electric. And we have signed a PPA with them to purchase those 50 megawatts for the benefit of Google and the data centers that Google has in our service territory.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I was going to sit this one out, but I got to ask.
Yes. Yes.
In the presentation, you said you guys started 17 nuclear locations, but only finished 7.
That's
And
correct.
there was one that was close to 92% complete.
That's
How
correct.
efficient is that? How do you get away with just throwing away, like, that seems like a lot of wasteful spending to me for us to
Well,
get to that point and not finish these facilities.
Yeah, so I don't disagree with you. I wasn't here back when some of those decisions were made. Now, part of it was, for those of us all that remember the 70s, right? Double-digit inflation, construction costs were going up significantly. 3 Mile Island occurred in 1979. So there were a lot of things that changed the nuclear landscape throughout the 70s. We did, when we stopped, we actually had 4 nuclear plants operating, 2 at Browns Ferry and 2 at Sequoia. We finished Watts Bar Unit 1 in 1996. Then we recovered Browns Ferry Unit 1, a plant that had been shut down for a decade or 2, brought it back online sometime in the early 2000s. Then we finished Watts Bar Unit 2, brought it online in 2016. Bellefonte, I just became the site vice president of Bellefonte October 1st. Been kind of a long-term dream of mine because it's an incredible asset that has been stranded. Most of the rest of the nuclear plants, they were not anywhere near that far along. Bellefonte, we really should do something with, whether it's build new plants and use there's support buildings there, cooling towers, intake pumping stations, all things that can be repurposed. So I do think that we will use that asset. Was it wasteful? Yes, it was probably an overreach on our part to be building 17 in the 70s.
But not to live in a world of hypotheticals, but if we had completed those 17, what message would you be delivering today? Do you think we will be meeting the demand and the greater demand and sufficiently serving this area with the power that we need?
Yeah, probably if we had finished those 17, we would not have built out the large gas fleet that we had today, that we would still see this unprecedented increase in demand. So I'd be here explaining to you why now we are building so many gas plants to meet the need, because we're caught flat-footed on deploying more nuclear. And then I'd probably be talking, the rest would be about the same about what we're doing to plan for a nuclear future.
So the path for our future is written right there in the story of our past. The path for our future is in the story of our past. Because we failed to do these things years ago, we're really struggling with them now. And that should be the message as to why we should be moving forward with some of these facilities to meet our demand. Where is that message getting caught up? Why is it so difficult to move forward now?
So being a federal employee, I probably can't answer.
Okay, I understand. You're already on
I think we are transitioning from resource management to philosophy there. So. But very good questions. Very good questions. All right. Any other questions on the part of the committee? Thank you, sir, very much. That was a good presentation. We appreciate that. We've actually finished up with our presentations a little bit ahead of schedule. I wanted to open it up and let anybody on the committee have any comments or any follow-up questions that, yes, Chairman Dickey.
Thank you. Just to the committee, I know Representative Reese has got great insight into energy and technology issues, but he also has great insight into agricultural issues as well. This past Friday, he won first place at the House Senate Livestock Show-Off. And I just want the committee to congratulate him on that award that he won. The House did not win the overall contest, but thanks to Representative Reese, came in first place with a great job down there at Perry Fair. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? All right, seeing none. Yeah, Chairman Stevens.
Michael, thank you. The hospitality of Rome, Georgia, both I've seen my house. But mostly I want to just throw out a big net, if you will, and I think Teddy hit on it probably better than most. And if you look at the map, especially the natural gas map and what we've seen for Williams and others, we're really set for energy in Georgia when it comes to natural gas. But in the future, and that's what we all should be looking at, the population shift is going to be pretty dramatic, and it's not going to take very long. California is going to lose its #1 population status as the most populous state to Texas, followed by Florida, New York, and us. We're right behind New York in 20 years. Because that should be with all the studies is North Carolina, so that grid of natural gas that moves up the coast from Texas, we're seeing changes in rapid fashion. So from an economic development perspective, I just wanted to throw that out as we plan for the future. We're already behind the 8 ball. Folks are coming and they're coming to big numbers.
Very good point, and I believe that's one of the reasons that the speaker put this committee together. Chairman Thomas, you want to close us out with any comments? And I want to follow what Chairman Stevens said. Thank the city of Rome. Thank you for the use of this facility and being so hospitable today. This is a great location, a tremendous asset here, and look forward to coming back here for future events. Chairman Thomas?
Thank you, Chairman Anderson. I guess I'd start off by saying that this committee is about the quality of life for our future generations and what we need to do to set the stage for that. And across the whole state is key. I talk about that a lot. One of the big uses I talk about is opportunity density problem, right? We have a lot of opportunity that are very densely packed in certain areas of the state. And it's a fun opportunity to be able to see what we can do to open up opportunity to some of those corridors that may not have some of the utilities, some of the infrastructure in place. Sorry, this thing's going out in and out on me. We've still got a big journey ahead of us, but Chairman Anderson, I want to thank you for all your hard work putting this together. I'd really like to thank the city of Rome for letting us come up here and see your beautiful place. This is just such a neat city. I always enjoy coming up here and visiting. Otherwise, I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chairman, and look forward to the next meeting.
Okay, this portion of our meeting is over with. Our committee is going to leave out from here, and we're going to go tour one of the more unique facilities in the state of Georgia, OPC's Rocky Mountain Pump Storage Hydro Facility. So anybody that's going to be participating in that trip, if y'all just kind of hang loose right here, Shay, if you want to make sure we all know where we're going and what we need to do from there, we'll just meet up front here. And with that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.